Hello everybody, welcome to season 2 of the Ketchup Café, where we're going to continue to catch up with old friends, new friends, or myself. I'm your host, Nasya, and it's my honor to, have you back here to this digital space that, I manifested in 2020. I'm going to acknowledge that it's been a year since the last episode, but, a lot has happened since then. And don't worry, I'm going to cover those things in this episode. But yeah, let's just set the scene a little, this podcast really started from my idea of having a digital space from home. That was, the year the world shut down. And then, I wanted to be able to still connect with other people or even have like my own space that I can curate. So that's why this podcast was birthed. But yeah, today I'm sitting in my home in Vancouver on my desk. I'm using my Hasami porcelain set, my cup, my teapot, and this was gifted to a very, very dear friend of mine who wants to stay anonymous, so I respect that. But the reason why this means a lot to me is this was a dream of mine since, I was, 16. I really wanted to have a Hasami set of my own, and this was like a little encouragement birthday gift from them to, keep doing or keep pursuing my dream. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm drinking hojucha today and having a bit of cookies from this local cafe, Yama Café. But yeah, as I was saying, a lot happened in 2021. That's why, I wasn't able to host, the Ketchup Cafe. But I would say let's narrow it down to, 3 major events or decisions that I had to make that, led me to here. So yeah, first things first. I signed up for a new challenge, start of the year. I started working a full-time 9-to-5 job in the tech industry. I'm just gonna stop there, because if anyone knows me, that just doesn't seem like something I would do. And even when I, signed up for that, I wasn't really too sure what I was doing. But the opportunity came up, and I just asked myself, why not? What is there to lose? Since, the world was shut down and, I was at home and this job allowed me to work from home. I signed up not knowing what I signed up for. And let's just say it wasn't an easy journey. I'm still there now, but I would say that was probably the toughest thing I signed up for. And the reason why I say that is because it challenged me to use a different language. First of all, I had to learn a whole new set of way to solve problems. And that was already out of my natural state. And then despite that, I had to, adapt to learn how to work with people, a whole group of people that I never met digitally. And then I guess the other thing was some parts of the job, the stresses of the job, were deeply connected to things that triggered me, that were rooted from my traumas. So it's like every day, like dealing with that was really tough mentally, and it developed into like a physical state of distress. But I'm not gonna, go into details. What I'm trying to express is it wasn't an easy, year, or at least like the first 6 months. But there were so many things that I learned, like even in a year from that job, that, I'll never regret signing up for. So, I started working there, and my manager was telling me, you're doing great, you're trying your best, but one thing I want you to work on is to be social, even in a digital space. And I kind of just told him, I'm like, as long as I'm meeting your expectations, isn't that what matters? And he was like, not exactly. He's like, you do have to learn how to, work with the people around you, even if it's in a digital setting. So I was like, I'm just here to work. I'm not here to make friends. And he's like, well, but these are the people that you're going to be working with. So it's time to think differently. And so that was the seed that was planted that really changed the course of my time at this job. So he told me, just start by saying good morning and good night to your team. And I did that. And in the beginning, I was like, this is ridiculous, because no one even knows who I am and no one cares that I'm saying good morning, good night. But he's like, it doesn't matter, because you're a part of something. And if no one knows who you are, they'll continue to not know who you are. So I started doing that. And I don't know what it was, but I have to say, I owe it to my manager for forcing me to come out of my comfort zone. I really started to develop like a really strong sense of community, and like my team specifically, within like the bigger team, like we were a tight-knit family. Like we were there for each other, and that's what got me through like every day. Like we were a little family, or even like friends, like working together. And what's great about, the setting was it's pretty casual, pretty loose, like there's no formality, so you can be yourself like 100%. And that was like completely acceptable. So I embraced that. And, at work, you put on that professionalism, but here it's like they want you to be fun and have a personality. And before I would put on this filter, but then slowly that filter started to, dissolve, and it was just nice to be able to be myself at work and be accepted. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was, especially for my role, I have to work with clients, and sometimes, people are needy or manipulative, and as a people pleaser, that's a tough situation to be in. And so that also caused a lot of stress in the beginning, because I didn't know how to say no, especially in a work setting. It's like, how do you say no? And this idea was nurtured by my manager, where I had to learn how to set boundaries, like firm boundaries, but like commit to, solving the problem. And so, yeah, like I don't think I really worked on this skill set until this job, where I was like doing it every day, practicing, how to set those boundaries. And also another thing is learning how to make sure you're okay first then you can be there for others like 100%. Like, that mentality wasn't ingrained in me. All I wanted to do was be there for others. But when I wasn't okay, I was still there for others. That's when I started to become, a rolling ball of anxiety, anger, sadness. So learning, about self-worth and applying the skills of being firm with people helped me even in like my personal life. And so, yeah, despite this job being like something way out of my comfort zone in the beginning, like, I'm slowly able to develop skills that I can apply in a bigger sense, even if this is not, what I'm born to do, or, it wasn't my plan to be in the tech industry. I can definitely use this skill as like a human being that's like growing and constantly looking to grow. So yeah, that took up a lot of my mental capacity for like a good 6 months. And then I decided that it was time for me to, it was a long thought process of deciding to come back home to Vancouver, but I set the due date, which was late June, July, where I gave myself, a month to go back to Toronto, pack, but, I was still working, and then come back home. But I guess I'll go, a little deeper as to like why I made this decision. So, it was a hard one as well, just because, I thought, I graduated and Toronto would have a lot more opportunities and I have a lot more network and friends there. It just seemed like the better option. But the moment it really hit me that I had to take advantage of having my family back in Vancouver is, in 2020 during, during the pandemic, that's when I lost my grandpa in Hong Kong. And that was like the first time I lost a family member. And I remember it being really tough because it was a shock. I saw him in the summer of 2019. I went to visit him, and I never thought that would be the last time. But when I was told the news that, he's no longer with us, and not being able to be there for family during that time, due to the lockdown, it was devastating. And, seeing my family hurt and not being able to help anyone, I was lost and sad. So I never want to feel that way ever again, knowing if I had an opportunity to make a decision to put my family first, being able to spend time with them and be there for them. I can't provide much tangibly, but what I can provide is me being there physically. And so that's what answered a lot of my doubts about moving back home. It's just a very simple answer. And so I just had to do it. And so, yeah, the beginning of 2021 summer, I packed my things and I had to make the journey back home. And, it was really chaotic because working full time and packing by yourself is not fun. And so just imagine that. That was, it was harder said than done. Like, now looking back, I'm like, I did it. But I think the uncertainties were like finding like a moving company, and note that I also decided to drive back home. So we drove from Toronto to Vancouver. There were just so many things in terms of timing that were out of my control. But, you know, as my friend Tommy, trust the process and do whatever you need to do to, you know, just move one step, and then go from there. But yeah, now I'm back home in Vancouver, and honestly, when I look back at my time in Toronto, like, Toronto's gonna always have a place in my heart, because that's where I was able to grow in certain ways and live like a full life when I was there, regardless of how mentally unstable I was, but also like finding that peace at one point. Like, I remember in 2020, and when I started this whole podcast, that was like my journey, like the start of the journey to heal, and never in my life have I ever felt that kind of peace. And that's what I remind myself every day is, you know, it just starts with a decision to try, you know, to be better. So, and I met so many amazing people there, you know, some of the most important people in my life I met in Toronto. So it's not a goodbye, it's just another chapter. But yeah, so thank you to everyone in my life who really was able to be a part of that chapter and make it that memorable. And for all like the roommates that were in my life, thanks for, you know, being there for me when I was a train wreck, but also like having fun times, you know. And yeah, that took me, I guess, to the end of the year where I was like back at home, working at home. And then, you know, something unexpected happens. And, you know, when life throws you a curveball, I think growth really comes through when you're able to deal with the curveball. So I was already in the process of like wanting to plan a trip back home to Hong Kong just to see my family, my grandma, my friend. And this was still, you know, we're still living in the pandemic, so it wasn't like a simple decision, but I really just wanted to prioritize them. But what really made this have to happen this time was we got a call, an unexpected call that, you know, my grandma in Hong Kong also, you know, passed. And yeah, there's, you know, I'm not sure if I've processed that yet, but now it really, like that moment, it really hit me that I'm like, I have to go. I have to put my family first, and I have to be there for them. And so it was more about like, how can I serve them? This is more of like a mission that I have to be on, less of like, you know, a relaxed thing. And let's just say everything wrong that could possibly go wrong happened, like before the flight. Maybe I can go into details because I just want to express this journey was definitely a memorable one, but hella difficult. Like the amount of hoops I had to jump through were like crazy. So let's start from the beginning. So because of this happening, I had to request to take a leave from work. So that was in process. Like that's not a normal thing. Like extended amount of time, so I did that, and luckily it got approved. So that's when I started being able to make concrete plans. So I booked my flight, and then we had to do the 14-day quarantine. So I also had to book that. And then let's fast forward. Then the airline told me that they're changing the date of my flight. So I had to contact the quarantine hotel to amend that. Luckily they were able to, because it was just like a day later. And then let's fast forward to when Hong Kong decides to shut down or not let any flights come in from Vancouver from a certain time period, which that was when my flight was scheduled. So this is when the chaos started to happen, and I didn't know what to do. So I had to call the airline and ask them to change my ticket. And then they did change my ticket to a connecting flight to the US, then to Hong Kong. And I was like, cool. And I would land the same day, so it's all good. So I didn't have to like change anything in terms of like hotel or whatnot. And then I was told that Hong Kong does not, like, that time frame, they're not accepting anyone from the US, like, through the borders. So I was like, and I remember that agent asking me about my citizenship. She's like, are you a Canadian? And I'm like, yes. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't get through regardless, even if I went on this flight. So I had to call them again, and then they rebooked me on a non-stop flight, but it was pushed back like a week later. So that meant I had to find quarantine accommodations that were, pushed back. And this was already like very near like the time of the flight, so a lot of things are already booked, but I took the flight regardless. And then I call into the hotel and they're like, oh, sorry, we're booked until 2022. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to cancel it and, ask for a refund, which did happen. But now I had to find a hotel. Like, that was on the list of accepted hotels for quarantine in Hong Kong. And let me tell you, everything was booked. Everything. I checked everything. And then I checked another day because they update it all the time. And I found I copied the address like from that document from the Hong Kong government website. And surprisingly, there was a room. And then I quickly booked it, but it's one of those bougier hotels. I booked it because there was no other option, and I'm like, it's fine, even if it's like double the price. I am committed to this, so it has to happen. And then when it got closer to the day of the flight, it felt too easy. Like, I don't know, my intuition was telling me like, you should call and check if everything's good. So I called an hotel just to make sure everything was good, and they were like, oh, are you booking for like the quarantine stay? I'm like, yes. And they're like, oh, well, that's not the hotel. I'm like, what do you mean? It's the same address. She's like, oh yeah, it's the same address but different name, so therefore different hotel. And I was just, that moment I lost it, because I was like, how can two hotels have one address? And so, I got transferred like a million departments. And also, no, this is past the date of refund. So this is like a lot of money on the line. So I was just freaking out internally. I didn't know what to do. I don't know what I could do. So I just asked nicely to talk to whoever was in charge, whoever's in charge. And I was able to, contact someone, and just, at least I was like, can you get me a room in that hotel with the same address? And if not, can I please have a refund? And so it was like an anxious night of just not knowing what will happen, and already accepting the fact that, I can't go because I can't cross the border because I don't have the document to prove that I have a room, and I don't have a room for my quarantine. Because there were many specific documents that were needed in order to, board the flight and get through Hong Kong's border. So this was one of the things, is you have to have a document showing that you have 14 days booked. So my mom was just like, calm down, let's just have some hope here. And she had a friend's husband who worked in the hotel industry in Hong Kong, who lived in Vancouver, and she was like, I will contact them to see if there's anything they can do for us. And I was like, honestly, Mom, I checked every single thing right now, like the hotels, there's no room until 2022. She was like, well, let's just try. So she tries, and they asked me for all my information. I sent it to them, and they're like, we'll do our best, we'll send it to all our networks, and they will contact you directly if there is any room. And I was just like, honestly, cool. Like, not banking on anything at this point. I didn't give up, but I also was not hopeful, I'll be honest. I accepted the fact that this is not gonna happen. And 30 minutes later, I got an email, and it was from a hotel that was on the list of accepted quarantine hotels. They said there's a room. So I was like, okay, and there's this link, and it was like, pay here, and I was like, kind of sketchy, but I'm gonna do it anyways because I don't have any options. And then I did it, and then there you go. I was confused about how real this was, but I was like, I will only believe this until I'm sitting in that room, across the border, in peace. Then I'll believe. But yeah, this was just, maybe like a couple days away from the day of the flight. And then the day of the flight, my dad tells me to check my flight on Google to make sure if it's on time, and I do it, and then I realized, why am I going to Seoul? And note that you do have to declare 24 hours in advance through the Hong Kong website about your flight itinerary and whatnot, just to get like this QR code to get through. So I already declared that my flight was non-stop from Vancouver, and it said on my confirmation, whatever, that it's a non-stop flight. So I was really confused. So there you go. I had to call in the airline one more time. This is the day of the flight. And I was asking them, why am I going to Seoul? And then they didn't know either. They're like, but it does say no connecting, like it's a direct flight. And they were able to get more details for me. Basically, it was some policy change where they had to like swap cabin crews, but it doesn't count as a layover because no one's leaving the aircraft. But I asked them, I'm like, how would I know what qualifies as a layover or not? And she was like, well, I don't know. So I'm sitting in a pool of uncertainty. Like this, it has been a journey of uncertainty from day one of me committing to this, and to the day of the flight, I still don't know if I'm gonna get through. So she was just like, just get to the airport earlier and go from there. And I was like, okay. And so I get to the airport like 6 hours before my flight, and the desk is not even open. And when it is, I'm there first in line, and the lady doesn't give me my boarding pass. And I was like, why? And she's like, because you don't have, a Hong Kong citizenship or whatnot, and you don't have a visa. And I'm like, based on my knowledge, you don't need that. And if the law changed, I would have known. And so I had to ask to speak to a manager, and he checked every single document that I researched that I needed. And then they let me have my boarding pass. So, that part I had to even fight for. And then I get on the flight, go to Korea, go to Hong Kong, land, and then go through all the, security, health declaration. Had to do the test, the PCR test when we land, wait for results, and then get shipped to our quarantine hotels. And there I was, in my quarantine hotel, as I anticipated from the beginning, but really questioned if it was gonna happen. And so, the reason why I went on in detail with that story was, without the details, it wouldn't make sense, how chaotic this whole trip was. But, now I look back, I'm back from the trip. And also, the day of my trip back was another, blessing, I would say, because a few days later, I don't know, I guess the Omicron got worse, and I guess no more flights were coming or going to Hong Kong. So this whole journey has been super eye-opening. 2021, when I look back, it was just full of chaos, full of uncertainty. But, despite all that, I'm really thankful that I was able to experience 2020 learning about the basics of self-worth, and setting boundaries and taking care of myself. I didn't have any of those basics before 2020. I was a very, very chaotic soul. But it was because of 2020 that, paved a thin foundation. I was able to use that to apply to 2021's chaos. And, I'm not perfect. I was definitely up and down. I was very down last year, same time. January to April, I was heartbroken because of how much trauma I had to face in my job. But then also faced with other challenges, so had to suck it up. And even ended the year with another heartbreak of losing a family member. But what really made a big impact in my life looking back is all the things I endured and learned throughout 2021 I was able to apply in a real life situation when I was on my mission serving my family in Hong Kong. I used everything I learned at work, even how to work with people, how to set boundaries, how to take care of myself mentally, physically, and learning to say no. I applied all these things when I was there, and when I look back, it's if I never took this job, I would have never pushed myself to learn these things. And so I don't know, it's so cheesy, but everything happens for a reason. I really do believe in that. And I also, believe in every human you meet in life also is part of, I guess, fate, if you want to say it. Good or bad, they're going to teach you something. And it all comes down to if you're able to make a decision to, push through and be graceful to yourself and choose love over everything. For me, it all just comes down to love and trying to become a better person, because if, I let all the things in the past get to me, I'll be a forever broken human. And when I, think very, I don't know, dark, I will get cynical, and I'll be like, what's the point of all this? But I guess the only thing I can make it valid for myself is if I can provide an ounce of love to the people around me, then I guess, then I guess it's worth it. So that was my 2021. And it was wild, but here we are. It's 2022. And, I have a lot of things that I'm manifesting. But, I'll definitely catch up with every one of you in the next episodes, about things that I'm manifesting about, dreaming about. And also, hopefully I can, have some guests on here where we can share, a really good conversation about who they are, because that's one thing I really want to be able to do here at the Ketchup Café is, to highlight other people's lives and their dreams, and just, talk about careers, cuisines, culture, and, just catch up. So thank you so much for coming back here, coming along this journey with me. I'm just, blessed to be able to sit here and share. So, let's do this together. And once again, thank you for listening. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.